All right, well, it's time to put some elbow grease in, put some work in, and get the LS Miata back up and running. We have a stacked calendar for the next month and a half. Yeah, month and a half plus. Yeah, month and a half. Month and a half plus maybe more. I don't even know what's past that. I haven't even looked past that because there's so much we're planning on doing in the next month and a half with this car. So we got to get it back up and running. If you didn't see the last episode, we had a grinding issue in the clutch. You could kind of hear it in the trans when I'd slip the clutch in second. Went ahead and pulled the transmission out and determined that the pilot bushing, I have one right here. So this is the brass one. This is what I have in the car. So it's just completely worn out. So this is supposed to support the input shaft, and it's not supporting much of anything. So the input shaft can just flop around and get loaded all different directions. No bueno, right? So I do have another one of these. This is like an LS1 style, so it's got roller bearings. These supposedly hold up a lot better. The brass just inevitably wears out. So they do have a setup now for these transmissions that is a roller bearing like this, but fits this input shaft because this doesn't. This is for a T56. This is a CD09 350Z trans. So anyway, I'm getting off track here. Trans is out. Now we got to pull the engine out. And the way we do that on this car is just drop the whole thing out the bottom. So suspension, everything comes out of the bottom. So it's a decent bit of work. It's not the end of the world. It's not fun. I'm not going to say it's fun, but it's not too bad. So anyway, that's what we're doing. So we got some fresh dollies. We're going to just drop this whole thing out the bottom. So, enough talking about it. Let's get to it. You can tell I'm dreading it a little bit. Building cars, fun. Putting new parts on cars, fun. Tearing a perfectly good working car apart that has one small issue to fix the one small issue, not as fun. Harder to be enthusiastic about it, but it's got to get done. So, we're going to get to it. Let's jump in. I think we're about ready to drop it. I gotta pull the steering column out. Also, I feel like I'm forgetting something. If you've seen me pull an engine before, you know the rule of thumb is you always forget at least one thing, and you figure that one thing out as the engine is dangling out and the line is about to rip. So I'm sure there will be one thing. Maybe not, because I've done this enough on this car, but I've said that before and been wrong. Easily my least favorite thing about like pulling engines out is just the mess. It's always messy, no matter what. You always get oil everywhere and brake fluid and water. Luckily our cooling systems, we run straight water, so I don't have to deal with sticky coolant, but still, that's definitely my least favorite part. Like whenever I think about, oh man, I gotta pull this engine out, that's what I dread the most, for sure. All right. As far as I know, she's ready. sweet. Well, we can get that one out at least. All right, engine is out. We have made quite an oily mess, as you can probably see. But not too bad, really not too bad. There's a decent bit of stuff, and dropping it out like this has its pros and its cons, but we got that header off. This one's kind of hanging out in there. I'm hoping we can just get the bell housing off without moving it, because I think to get it off, we're gonna pull the starter and do some finagling, which is ironic because that's the easier side to get off in the car. This is the first time I've pulled an engine out of this car not to replace the engine. Normally I pull the accessory drive off, and I do things differently because the same engine's not going back in, you know? So it's weird to pull the engine to replace something else, right? It's funny, just some of the stuff that's just been in here year after year. This Aviad dry sump pump, I bought this pretty much in the very beginning because I blew the first motor up, first drift event. So I bought this 2 scavenge stage, 1 pressure stage, like basic dry sump kit. And I mean, it's been hanging in there, literally. But that was definitely one of those purchases. It was a hard pill to swallow to spend $3 grand on an oil system, but I was like, if it saves me one motor, it's worth it. Even a $2,000 motor with all the time and effort and headache and blowing it up at an event. So I don't know. I try to preach dry sumps, you know, when you can get a whole kit for like $3 grand with the pulley and the tank and everything, it's hard to pass it up. So BCs, those have been in there for 3 years. I might try to change spring rate. Thought about bumping up front spring rate a little bit. I'm a little conflicted. It's hard with the drift car or comp car setup because, you know, to make rear grip, you kind of are doing different things than to make the car handle well. If that makes any sense. Like, you kind of want like no prep suspension setup where you transfer a lot of weight to the rear. But in doing so, you kind of have to sacrifice the way the car handles and back and forth. So I want to try some stiffer springs. I might toss them on because it'll be easy enough to do them while this is out. But yeah, we need to quit jibber jabbering. We need to get back to work. We need to pull the bell housing off, pull the clutch off, then we can pull the pilot bushing out, get that guy out of there, get the new one in, put it all back together. That came off easier than expected. Gotta remember to put this back on before the bell housing. Clutch still looks great. This little bugger, oh yeah, you can see it. Oh, you can see all the bronze, dude. It just got demolished. So this little guy is our whole problem and reasoning for pulling the engine out. You can see, look at all that bronze dust. Wow, that's wild. It's crazy. I've never torched one like that. This engine's been in a little over a year. My old 5.3 was in for 2 years. And when I pulled it out, the bushing looked pretty normal. So I don't know if we got something going on. I don't know if it's, you know, putting that new trans in, if maybe the input shaft bearing's bad in it and it was tearing it up. I don't know. But yeah, that's no bueno. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this out of here. From my experience, that's the easiest way to do it with these brass bushings, because when you try to use the pullers, the brass is so soft it just tears it apart and doesn't really do anything. So we'll get the little body saw and cut this into pieces. Not the most fun way to do it, but it gets the job done. There we go. Get that cleaned out good and then toss the new one in. All right, little pro tip. Well, I hate the term pro tip. That would insinuate that I'm a pro. Little tip from someone who's learned something. That's what we'll call it. What's the acronym for that? If you're putting an LS in something out of an auto car, which all of mine have been, this is out of an Escalade, it's never going to have had a pilot bearing here. So because of that, this usually has a little bit of surface rust in here. It makes life a lot more difficult. What I usually do when it's a fresh motor is I get in here with a wire wheel and just clean that surface rust off. Now, we've had a pilot bushing in here, so there's no rust. But what I also do is put a little bit of grease, just a tiny bit, just to help everything go in smoother so it's not metal on metal. I like to use this. It's like PB penetrating grease. because it's just kind of a thin grease and it's got like anti-seize properties, but I mean really any grease would work. I just like this because it's got the little brush. Makes it easier to not make a mess. So again, not a lot, because you don't want to like add thickness or push anything, but just enough to help it just slide in there a little easier. So got the bushing in the freezer. It has been in there overnight, so we're gonna try to move quick to get it in while it's still cold and shrunken a little bit. Hopefully it goes smoothly. All right, whew, bit of a workout. I mean, you didn't even see it. I had to throw you out of the way because it wasn't wanting to go in straight, but it's in there. All right, just gotta torque them down, but everything's tight. Then we'll toss the bell housing back on. All right, well, I spent some time deliberating on what to do. I had a bit of a dilemma. When I first found out what the problem was, I was like, input shaft bearing on the old trans has to be toast. I'm gonna replace the trans if I go that route or move to a dog box. Decided to stick with CD09. But then I was like, well, if I do end up building a car at the end of the season, you know, why buy a new trans if I could just rerun this one? It's probably okay, but a few friends I know had basically the same thing happen where they killed their pilot bushing, they replaced it, put it all back together, and blew their trans up not long after. One of them, it locked the whole trans up and he went into the wall. Not good, catastrophic failure. So I decided to just suck it up and buy a brand new OEM CD from Nissan. So this is like a CD008, so it has the most recent revisions. They've revised them over the years. So luckily my buddy John had this thing lying around. He had got one for his project, and I think he ended up getting another one for, I don't know exactly why he had an extra one, but he had an extra one. So I bought this one from him. And as much as it was a tough pill to swallow with this kind of car where I'm traveling far distances to go to events, if I were to blow the trans up at the start of an event, you know, I could have spent more money going to and from the event, not to mention the time, than I would have spent just buying a new trans. So it was just kind of one of those things, a worthwhile investment. And really this was kind of my plan anyway. When I took this trans out, I was having some shifting issues. I just couldn't get into third very well. I wasn't sure exactly what the problem was. I didn't know if it was the shifter, like something with the clutch hydraulics, something like that. So I put this trans in, which I had in the car originally, which I knew had a bad fifth gear, but it was okay. It was a decent trans just to test the theory. And what do you know? It shifts great with this trans. My whole plan was, if it works, then I'll pull it out when I have some time and put a brand new one in. Now, if this hadn't happened, I never would have put a new one in. I would have kept running it until it broke. So kind of forced our hand to put a brand new transmission in. So, I mean, luckily you can still get these things new from Nissan. So this will be nice. It'll be nice to have a brand new 0 mile trans in there. Should take the abuse we're gonna throw at it for at least a little while longer. So all of that being said, we've got some work to do. So obviously this is not gonna bolt on. We gotta modify this. We gotta cut the bell housing off. We gotta cut the shifter rod off, pull the shifter off, swap our adapter plate setup over with our throwout bearing, swap our shifter on, swap our trans mount on, do all of those things, and we can put this on the LS, put the LS back in the car, and then put all these other parts back in. So we have got our work cut out for us. We're coming up on the drifting here shortly. Like, we got to leave in not too long, you know, a few days. So I really want to get this hammered out. So I'm going to quit jibber jabbering about it, and we're going to get to knocking out some of this work. Whew. Man, that is pretty satisfying. Unwrapping a brand freaking new transmission. We got a leaker.
You weren't kidding.
Yeah. Imagine if it was full. Alright, got everything we need stripped off the old trans. You can kind of hear how crusty this is. It's a little crusty. There's a lot of metallic-iness in the oil, so I'm glad we're changing it. Fresh trans. Jose Juanito is finishing cleaning all the freaking RTV out. This plate has been on 3 transmissions now. It's been on that one twice, this one. Now it's going on this one. It's lived a life of swapping. So all the RTV excess is just built up over time. So trying to get it right and dialed this time. I mean, fresh trans, it deserves it. So one more thing I'm going to do is grime a little bit into the plate, just because when we're pulling it in the car, it passes by the driver's side header, and we can't really move that header much, and it's really hard to squeak it past there. If I just notch like a ½ inch there, which won't really affect anything, should be able to get it in and out a lot easier. Got the adapter plate on the new trans, shifters on. I gotta pull this out actually. This was just in here so I could put it in 5th gear. Just left the throwout bearing on the plate. So I think we're about ready to rip. Now we just gotta put the trans on the engine in the car. That's why we got Jose Juanito here. That's a very, that's a tall order by yourself. Getting it out's fine, but just trying to get it lined back up, a little tricky. All right, engines and trans mated, assembled, ready to go. We got that header bolted on. Can't bolt this one on because the collector is sitting on the dolly basically, so we'll have to wait till it's in the car. But man, it looks snazzy seeing it with a brand new freaking transmission. Yeah, as far as I know, as far as I can remember, everything is good. Everything that we need to do while it's out is done. So now we just need to get it in the car and bolt it up. So we'll do the old snapperooski here. Ready? My thumb's a little sore. Oh, that was a weak one. Hold on. Ready? All right. Engine is back in. Bolted up. We got all the subframe bolts in. Those are a bit of a struggle sometimes. Got the steering shaft in. That's a bit of a struggle sometimes. So all of that went pretty smoothly. So far, so good. We obviously still have a good bit of work to do. Got to hook up all the wiring, plumbing, dry sump pumps got to go back on, radiator in, intake, fluids. There's a bit. I got to finish building the expansion tank. So we still got a bit of work ahead of us, but we are going to dive back into this tomorrow, try to hammer it out, get the car done, go test drive it, make sure all is well, load it in the trailer, and go drifting. So I hope to see you guys for that, but for now, that's going to be it. We are out of time. Obviously, it's raining, and I'm tired. So yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Goodbye.